Okay, I might have been wrong. It's setting up the stream now, so.
Hi, Bob.
All right, we're live.
Hello,
Hi,
David.
Stacy. And looks like James is there in the background. Bob, or Assessor Thompson. You're on mute, but that's okay.
All right, yeah, my audio is really quiet. I might just end up unplugging the monitor if we don't get anyone to show up, or does that not work for you, James?
It's fine. I'll move it closer.
Okay.
Turn my speakers up better. I just turn them down.
Stacy, if you were talking, you were on mute.
Actually, I'm here in the commissioner's room, so I was talking, but not for your benefit.
Ah, understood.
One more minute, and then I'll read the statement.
Okay, I can hear that. What just happened?
All I did was opened up a file.
The statement.
Well, I can just hear the chairman. It's replaying. I can hear that. This was happening the other time. When we were
All I did was opened up a file.
Oh, it's
Oh, we've got some feedback loop here.
delayed.
Yeah, whatever you changed, you're gonna have to unchange it.
I didn't change anything. All I did was clicked into a file.
It's kind of probably here the same thing.
Okay, so you're muted. We've got no more feedback right at the moment. We'll see how that goes. I'll go ahead and call the meeting of the boards of appeals and equalization to order. 6 p.m. on Thursday, June 17th at 2021. Firstly, I'll read our statement regarding virtual meetings. Number one, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 12. Number two, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Number three, we have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion, testimony, and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. Number four, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator James Yorkie, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the County Boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number five, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. That brings us to the roll call. Auditor Powers.
Mr. Chair,
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Storley,
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Here.
Commissioner Swallowson.
I'm here.
Let's see, Commissioner Hawkins,
Here.
Auditor Powers.
Did you say Keishan's still here?
He is not.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
Sorry, folks, we are having audio feedback. It's doubling back. Is it doing it on your streams or just ours?
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan. It is. Commissioner Swallowson.
I'm here.
Let's see, Commissioner Hawkins,
Here.
Auditor Powers.
Did you say Keishan's still here?
He is not.
And if I may make a suggestion, it may,
Sorry, folks.
for
we
whatever
have
reason, just
audio
be the
feedback.
MIS admin
It's
computer.
doubling back. Is it
If,
doing it on your
um,
streams or just
Oh,
ours?
do you have YouTube?
We want to try Commissioner Hawkins'
That's a minute
computer.
deal.
That might be an option.
So, yeah.
Okay, we've got it figured out now.
Okay, great.
We are good to go. So we've got roll call done, right?
Yes, I was just waiting for Assessor Thompson.
All right, present.
Thank you. Next on the agenda here is authorizing the verbal signatures from us meeting officials. And so I don't know exactly how we do that, but I'm guessing we just look for a motion for that, authorizing all of our signatures on that Board of
I'll
Appeals
move
and
to authorize
Equalization
all
form.
our verbal signatures for this meeting.
And I second.
Thank you. Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing or hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Swallowson,
Aye.
Commissioner Storley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mills is aye as well. And Auditor Powers, you are also a voting member, it appears.
Yes, and I vote aye also.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. It appears we have 6 voting members. Is that correct? What would happen in the event of a tie?
You know, I can't answer that.
Okay. Well, I'll table that question. Moving on in our agenda, we're to hear the public appeals. If there's anyone from the public at the physical meeting location, they have an opportunity to speak now. Is there anybody there, Assessor Thompson?
There is no one here, Chairman Mills.
Okay. Well, we do have an hour for that, so if someone does show up, whether it be on our Zoom meeting or in person, we'll give them a chance to speak at that point. Otherwise, and the other items over to you, I believe, Assessor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Mills and Commissioners. I will start off with, I had one tax, we didn't necessarily come to an agreement on the valuation. Miss Nancy Iverson from Tofty provided me with some comparables. I went out to the property April 27th this spring and did an interior inspection. We were just out at the property a couple of years ago, but did an interior inspection and just verified all the information on our record and took some comparables from Miss Iverson at that time. She is a real estate agent. So I have some MLS listings that I will share my screen, and forgive me, it's going to be a bit of a challenge because I'm not able to have 2 screens in here. I just have the one. So let me share my screen and then I'll pull up that document. So I did send all these over to you guys. This first packet, it's titled the Iverson documents. There's 20 pages there, and it's a number of MLS listings as well as the tax records for those properties. So the first one on page 1 here is a land sale. Just below the photo, you can see that there was an asking price that it sold. It gives an MLS listing, And, you know, in the middle of the form there on the right-hand side, it gives the sale date and the sale price. So this is a vacant land sale. I think Miss Iverson just kind of wanted to use as a comparison for her land value. And we'll get to that once I go through my information. I've included all of her comparables in my sales grids in my information, so we can take a second look at all this, but I did want to just show what was provided by the taxpayer. So this is a land sale at 65, it says on the MLS listing. I think we reduced that to 63,000. That might have been because of like a seller concession. We do include those off of the sale price if the seller has offered to pay some portion of the sale price. So there's a discrepancy or a difference in their listed sale price and ours. Then there's the tax record for that parcel. You can see we have it valued at $59,500 for 2021. So we're below that sale price of 63,000. It's kind of right where you want to be, just below it. Then this first comparable she provided is in Lutzen. It's on the golf course. It's on White Birch Trail. It is a manufactured log home, so a custom built. This one doesn't have a basement, and we can go into more of the details on the square footage and age and things like that in my comparison grid. But this, I think, is probably the best comparable that was provided by Miss Iverson. This one, it looks like, I believe it sold for right around 465. You can see that the asking price was 489.9, and then the sold sale price is 464.9. So this one I do feel is a decent comparable with Miss Iverson's property, which is valued at like 477. So then there's the tax record for that property as well. You can see we have that one valued. It's about 453. So that there's two records there. One is for the common elements. That's the portion of common elements that this lot owns, and then as well as the main parcel with the building on it. So then this comparable is down in Tofty. This one is a little bit bigger of a home, and they had an original asking price of 570, and it ended up selling right around 400,000. So I'll go over a little bit more of the specifics of this one in my grid, as well as here's the tax record. And you can see on this one, the total taxable value is 332. It sold for 400. So, you know, we're quite a bit below that. Our assessment is below that sale price on this one. And then this one is probably, it is the closest comparable to Miss Iverson's property. In fact, it's on the same road, just down the road. It is, however, quite a bit smaller. It's not quite the same construction. And, you know, I'll go over some more of the details of this one, but this one was listed at 309 and it sold for 309. So we'll go over the specifics of that one. And again, here we've got it assessed 292.3. So we're just below on this one. We didn't do too bad. Then the final comparable provided by Miss Iverson is over again in Lutzen. This is a much bigger house, a lot more square footage. It is not a custom built home. It's a stick frame, a wood frame built home. And, you know, like I said, it's quite a bit bigger, but this one original asking price was 397. It ended up selling for about 375. So now I will open up the information that I put together on these, and we'll go over kind of the comps that I'd selected that I feel are a good representation of sales in the market that would be somewhat comparable to Miss Iverson's property. I'll zoom in a little closer here. So this is what I've put together. It starts off with a little bit of narrative about the property and explains to Miss Iverson and Mr. Iverson that I've done a reviewed all the property information, and then did a side-by-side comparison of recent sales in the market. So the Iverson property, it's 3.81 acres. It's got a restricted seasonal type view of Lake Superior. Theirs does have a year-round view that's quite restricted. In the wintertime with the leaves off the trees, there's an open view of Lake Superior. So you can kind of catch that in the background of this photo here. But it's a 2006 built 2-story. It's about 2,600 square feet of gross living area. That means above grade. And it is a timber frame with a dovetail style log construction. There's also a 6 by 21 timber framed open porch on the main level. So that's what's over here on the 16 by 21 on the left-hand side, and a large 2-story open timber frame porch on the front of the house. This is a photo of the front that I took on April 27th. And then this is an older photo from our last inspection when we did the quintile in 2016. This is the rear of the house. There's a 20 by 24, a tall ceiling vaulted area. It's over the great room, and it's got a lot of that fenestration facing Lake Superior. That would be the windows up in the peak there to allow the light in. It's got a large synthetic deck. The span of that is 75 feet throughout the entire rear of the home and that open porch area. And you can see there in the foundation, it's not a full basement. It does have access doors, and it's like what we call like a functional or a finished crawl space. There is concrete floor, there's utilities down there. It maintains a temperature so that the pipes and the, anything and any of the utilities down there aren't freezing up in the winter, and also used for some storage area. The ceiling height was about 6 feet, but there were some, utilities running through that basement or that crawl space that limit it, so it doesn't necessarily meet that that living area if you were to finish it off with the ingress and egress windows. So trying to give a little bit more descriptive of the property. This is that timber frame wood shed. It's 6 by 11. It's rather nice for a wood storage shed. And then I'll get down into, this is just an aerial shot. You can see the power line does run along the south border of that property, but it's pretty typical for most of these properties on that bluff. The power line is going to, just happen to be running along Highway 61 for almost all of these plats. So it's pretty common. We don't see, any effect for having that power line easement unless it's running straight through, the build site or the middle of a lot. That can affect the value of it. But when it's running along the edge or parallel to an edge, we aren't seeing that in the market. So the bottom grid here, this is just land sales. And the first one here in the first column was the one provided by Nancy Iverson. This one I think is a good representation. It's in that same subdivision on Outlook Drive that's just off of Laveau Ridge. So it's a little bit smaller, but it's a pretty recent sale. 2018 is not too long ago, and it sold for $63,000. So, all my assessment rates or tables are built off of a rate per acre. And you can see at the bottom, I've broken out for the subject here, it's the assessed value divided by the acreage. And then for each of these, this is the sale price divided by the acreage. So you can see that the Iverson property is kind of in the middle. It's a little bit higher than this Chester Boulevard sale. It's a little bit lower than the Outlook Drive sale in a price per acreage term. But I think in the big picture, if you look at a sale on that plat at $63,000 in 2018, we've had an increasing market. We're assessed at 67. I think we're right in the ballpark with that value for a Lake Superior view property. So that is just a little bit of rundown on the land. Now down here, I've got 2 sales grids. The first sales grid on the top is the sales that I've selected. And you can see in the grid, the green letters would be anything that the subject is superior in nature. The red would be the subject being inferior in nature. And the reason I've highlighted this one top to bottom is because I feel like of all of the comparables, this one I feel matches the best. The only thing that this property has a characteristic that's superior to the subject would be that 2-car garage. So at the very bottom, I've broken out a very common measurement. As long as you're comparing similar quality, similar location, things that don't really have a big change over the spectrum, then this price per square foot is a good measurement. On the subject here, we've got $184 assessed price per square foot, and that includes all the finished livable space. There's nothing in the basement, so that's all 2,600 square feet. This property, if you include the 1,000 finished in the basement, it's actually a little bit larger in square footage. It's got over 2,800 square feet total. This one at 2,800 square feet breaks out to $190 a square foot based on that market sale price of $540,000. This is also a custom built home. It's a Lindell cedar home. And the one in the second grid is very similar. It was actually owned by the same owner. He sold both these properties at the same time. And this one's just a little bit smaller. In fact, it's smaller than our subject property, with the 600 finished square feet in the basement and the 1,200, 1,300 roughly upstairs. It's still slightly smaller than the subject at 2,600 square feet. So the total sale price on this one was $425. This is again over in Lutzen. It has pretty much all features, inferior to the subject except for that basement. This one is at $224 a square foot. Then the comparable I feel is the best comparable is the White Birch Drive in Lutzen, and that is one of the comparables provided by Nancy Iverson. It's inferior in every way other than, in my opinion, that 2-car garage. That's an additional feature. We're valuing garages, depending on what they are, somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000, as long as there's no workshop space or upper level and things like that. So if you're looking at the sale price of this one and removing that garage value, you also have to consider adding in additional value for things like the square footage. So, we've got almost 500 square foot, 500 square foot, almost exactly more in the subject. So this one I feel is a good comparable. And in fact, if you look at that price per square foot measurement or I guess indicator, the sale is actually higher than our assessed value on the subject property at 184. So now the sales grid on the bottom, this is the other 3 comparables that were provided by Miss Iverson. You can see that there's a lot more red in these grids, a bigger lot size, bigger square footage, basements on these 2. And then what I've highlighted here in yellow is, I think, what is the big distinguisher between this sale and this sale in the second column and the last column. I think that the quality of the construction of these properties doesn't match a timber framed log home or a log home or a custom built home like that. So I think that's why you're seeing these much significantly smaller price per square foot is due to that construction quality. When you look at the Iverson property, it's a very high-end construction, and it has all kinds of upgrades throughout. So when you look at a regular stick-built home, it just doesn't compare in quality. So that's why I've highlighted that construction and also highlighting this price per square foot. I think that kind of is representative of the quality of those structures. So this is essentially, kind of how an appraisal is put together, except for we would make adjustments for features, such as if the acreage, if we felt like a 5-acre lot was significantly more desirable, we would maybe remove value for the difference in the acreage. If I was doing an adjustment on this one or a grid on this one with adjustments, I probably wouldn't adjust, because really a 2.5 acre, a 5-acre lot down in those platted subdivisions isn't much of a difference. So to some people it might be, if they have plans of building a garage or some other structure, they might want some of that additional land, or maybe they just want more privacy. But you really don't see it in the sales. If a 2.5 acre lot, if I scroll back up to that land sale grid, the price per site, the price per build site is pretty consistent, where you have that $60,000, even if it's 5 acres or 2 acres. That's a pretty good comparison right there between those first 2 land sales of, you're not necessarily seeing a big change in value for land size. But square footage is certainly one that we would adjust for. Having a basement is one that we would adjust for. So in the eyes of an appraiser, what you do is you take the comparable that's the most similar, and you use that one as kind of your you weight that one the most in your reconciliation when you're deciding what you should be using for values. And I think with this one, you could think that you're going to be adding a little bit for the square footage, and you're going to be removing a little bit for that garage, and then you're going to come out to a number based off of that sale price. You go down on the garage, up on the square footage, and where do you land, and then you're going to probably weight that comp the most. So that's in a nutshell kind of how we put together these grids, and then we look at all of them and weight one the most. But you certainly want to be within the range. You don't want to be above, outside, or below above or below that range of sales, and you want to be kind of close to the most similar sales. So You know, in this one, the Iverson property is assessed. Let me pull up the record here on what we have for the Board of Appeals record. And that will show you compared to those values we've got. So the Iverson property is 477.6 assessed value. And I think that it's probably the most similar to this 450, but certainly if any of the commissioners have questions, or if you want to review any of these MLS listings or property records, I can go into more detail if you do have questions.
Anybody have questions?
I just want to thank you for the great comparison and providing the color differentiation that makes it a lot easier. Thank you for that.
Yep. So, you know, my recommendation on this one, you know, granted, we don't have Mrs. Iverson here to make any kind of statement. I did present the information that she supplied to me, and I let her know that I would present that to the commissioners. And then, you know, ultimately it's up to the commissioners to decide, you know, do they feel like it's necessary to make some kind of an adjustment, or to go with what the assessor is recommending. And on our appeals sheet, you can see I'm recommending no change on this one. So I'll leave it up for debate and discussion or questions.
Bob, just curious, when you, the construction is wood frame, do you look at the type of wood, the condition of it, things like that?
Yeah, so we actually grade properties. We put a quality rating on them, and it's really one of the only subjective things we do. The only other subjective thing that we really do to a property is we can put an effective age on it. So as a house is getting updates over the years, we reduce the effective age, which brings the value of it back up. So, you know, if somebody did a complete remodel on a house that we have, you know, depreciated 30 or 40 years, we're going to bump that, you know, we're going to cut that depreciation in half by upping that effective age. With the qualities, we basically have 1 to 15, and from like 3 to 12, there are half increments. So we have, you know, probably 25 different levels of grading a property. I would say in Cook County, most properties that you come across as far as homes, they're going to be like a 5.5 to about a 9 or a 9.5. And those are based off of, you know, a number of different things that we look for, the materials that are used. And a lot of times we're only getting the exterior information. So we're making a lot of our grading considerations based off of exterior info. So when you look at the Iverson property and you show up outside, you can clearly tell it's timber framed, it's log construction, and it's one of the highest end types of constructions you'll find in the county. As many upgrades as essentially a builder can do. You know, roof material, we're seeing some changes in the roofing materials up here. Cedar is obviously one of the most expensive, and metal roofs are pretty expensive. Asphalt roofs are kind of considered a lower grade, but you know, with asphalt roofs, you can get a 20-year or a 30-year or a 15-year shingle. So we look at all these different things, the types of windows that are going in there. You know, are they double hung, double pane windows? Are they vinyl windows? Are they casement windows? All of those things, you know, vinyl siding versus, you know, like this log home. So all of that comes into play, and we have a guide that tells us where things should fall based off of their construction materials. So that is essentially how we look at those wood frame constructions. They're typically going to be graded lower just because of the construction process and materials. And we'll find differences. Like a lot of times in Cook County, you'll see more modern homes are being built on 2x6 construction. You know, back not too long ago, 2x4 construction was pretty common, but you know, we do make notes of that. If I go out to a house that's under construction, we're going to write down, you know, what types of materials they're using, what if they're using 2x4 or 2x6 and all that. I haven't seen any steel framed up here in Cook County yet, but it is common. Builders are starting to use steel frame too.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? And if there are none, entertain a motion to either accept Assessor Thompson's recommendation or request another change or anything you like.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Assessor Thompson's recommendation.
Sorry, Commissioner Sullivan, I heard motion to accept, but then there was no other sound.
Assessor Thompson's recommendation.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? I would just also add that I appreciate the breakdown and the level of detail that you go through, Assessor Thompson, when evaluating homes and their values. It's extremely helpful when we're making these decisions to have that information and to get the walkthrough. So thank you again for that. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Oh, Commissioner Hawkins, anything?
No.
No.
Okay. Hearing none, then I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Swallowson,
Aye.
Commissioner Storley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
Auditor Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills is aye as well. The motion passes unanimously to accept Assessor Thompson's recommendation. Thank you.
All right.
So, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, we do have a list of, let's see here. Boy, that's funny. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. I was going to say how many exactly others there are, but I won't now. But we do have a list. We do have a list here of other recommendations, and I was curious if there's any particular questions from commissioners on any of these particular recommendations, or Assessor Thompson, do you want to walk through each one, or do you want to give just a general overview, a quick overview of each one?
Yeah, I might as well just do a quick walkthrough of each one. We've got plenty of time and no one has shown up yet. So
Very good.
yeah, and that was a good catch on the numbering there. I don't know, I must have somehow botched up those numbers, but I certainly can see that now. So the first one there, we have the Nancy Iverson, we passed that one. And the next one there, Michael Byers, will be changing from the vacation rental or the short-term rental classification over to the seasonal recreational. This is a Caribou Highlands unit. We did get a call based off of our valuation notice, and he said he does not rent. He doesn't participate in the rental pool. So we take him at his word for it, and we're making that recommendation for that change. Do you want to motion on these all at the end, or do we want to go through these one by one? I think that's totally the board's discretion.
Oh, I would hope that we would do them all at the end after your run through here.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman Mills. So following that, we have Bob Warwick. It's a $40,400 reduction. This is for a age septic system, and I corrected the upper level square footage and the effective age on the property based off of a review. So that one is a $40,400 reduction. Heidi Pilot, this is a lot over on Coyote Ridge, and we had assessed it with a view of Lake Superior. I did drive out and look at the property, and there's not even a driveway into the property right now. So Typically on those, we aren't going to add a view factor in unless somebody has gone up and verified that there's a view. So when I showed up, no driveway. When you walk into those woods, you can't see Lake Superior. So I'm making that recommendation to remove that. Bill Copeland, this is for the odds and ends building just on the outside of town here. And this one also, we had on the record that it had a full septic system with a drain field. According to Bill, there's not a full septic, it's just a holding tank there, and they're able to get by with that because they have very little use of their sewer system. And also there was some reduction to the building value. My opinion is that the building is suiting its need right now, but I think it's in need of a lot of repairs or complete tear down and rebuild. So based on some of the things that I observed when I was out there this spring, I'm making that recommendation for a reduction on that property as well. William Rosso is an appeal that Rachel had handled. I believe she is in the meeting, but this one was just a slight increase because the second story square footage was incorrect. And I actually did a little bit of looking at this property before Rachel went out and did her inspection. And I told Rachel, I said, make sure that the taxpayer understands that this can result in an increase, because when I looked at the valuation of the property, I thought this seems low. And so Rachel went out and she did confirm that the upper level had additional square footage that we didn't have on the record. So he has been notified that we intend to propose a recommended $1,200 increase at this meeting. Vatterut, that's a $7,700 reduction due to a survey that was brought in. This one, as well as the next three appeals, are all based off of the same taxpayer appeal. We had a split. It's on the Cascade Beach Road. It's actually a spur off of the Cascade Beach Road. There's one road called Black Point Road or Black Point Beach. And they had divided up, I think it was about 13 acres into 4 different lots. And when we got the initial request for dividing, it was like a hand-drawn map. So it was estimated front footages, estimated acreage. It's quite common we get those, especially when there's a real estate deal that's kind of in the mix. It's happened a number of times to us where we get a proposal for a split and then it ends up being something different than that. So the first year of the split, it really doesn't make a big difference because the value of those 4 lots, the sum of those 4 lots has to equal the same value of the single lot. The reason why is because we set that value January 2nd, the prior year. When we get the split, the tax bill can't change for the current assessment. So we have to divide it and keep all 4 of those lots at the exact same, the sum of those 4 have to be the exact same value of what we had as the single lot the prior year. Then when we roll into the next assessment, they get valued independently. So that's where we are now. And the record was still reflecting those estimated front footages and estimated acreage. As soon as they got the valuation notices, they questioned it and they brought in a survey that was done after the fact. And we've updated all the front footages. So what you have is you have 3 lots that are being reduced as a result of that survey and 1 lot that is being increased as a result of the survey. The owner of the increased lot is Morgan Moores, and his parents were the ones who brought the survey into my office, and they're aware of the proposed increase. They have power of attorney for Morgan Moore's affairs. So that is those 4 appeals, all due to a survey that was brought in for a split property. Then the last one is the city of Grand Marais. There was a shed down, way down by the campsite, down by the beach, and they were using it, or they were leasing it out to the Sons of the Legion. They were storing the bingo tent and some other supplies in there. It's kind of been falling through the cracks for a number of years, but we're proposing to reduce that by $2,700 to basically eliminate that shed's record. And in a future board meeting, we're probably going to see an abatement because the Sons of the Legion stopped using the shed, I think, in 2019, and the tax bill continued to be sent, and it lost the exempt status, or they never had exempt status. So the city who owns the shed would be exempt with application or without application because they're a city, but that would typically be exempt except for when it's leased out to a non-exempt party. So for 2020 and 2021, we actually will have to get an abatement. Other than that, there's nothing my office, as far as I can do, as far as deleting that or getting rid of those tax bills that are now delinquent. And Auditor Powers, I'm sure is aware of this situation. I know we've kind of had a back and forth on it, but where we're at right now is the Suns have caught up. They're current on the years that they were leasing the shed. And now all we need is an abatement application to get to do away with those 2020 and 2021 tax bills, which I thought were about $51 or something in that ballpark.
Very good. Any questions from commissioners about any one of these particular items or recommendations? Don't see any. I don't hear any. So now we can. I could entertain a motion to approve the recommendations as a whole, or if a commissioner would like to pull one, we can do that, and then either approve or deny the recommendation of any item that's pulled. But I'd entertain that motion at this point.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair,
I make a motion to accept the assessor recommendations. I believe there's 10 of them.
Really, Auditor Powers, I heard something.
Mr. Chair, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I would just note that I again appreciate the level of detail and effort and work involved in going through these appeals. Assessor Thompson, thank you yet again there.
Thank you, Chairman Mills.
All right, well, I'll do the roll call. Commissioner Storley,
Aye.
Auditor Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Swalson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills is aye as well. We have unanimous approval of Assessor Thompson's recommendations. Now,
So if you guys would like, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'd sent over last Thursday as far as like the sales ratio study, the mini abstract, and some of those things. And if any one of you guys have questions on those, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I can kind of go through some of the things that I think are maybe of useful information.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit, Bob. I'm hearing a lot of the Lake Superior view factor. How does that contribute to one's assessment? If you live on Lake Superior, more than likely you're going to have a view. But if you live across from Lake Superior, how does that factor into your property?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. If you're looking at like Lutzen in general, a 5-acre lot, it can range from $40,000 to $60,000 in general, I would say, without like a Lake Superior view. If you add the Lake Superior view, depending on if it's like an unobstructed Lake Superior view with about 180-degree view, you're looking at 110,000 plus, so almost double. It's almost double in value. And we have actually seen a number of sales now with those Lake Superior views. Typically they're the high desired ones, and with what's going on in the market today, everything's selling. So if there were 4 lots and 2 of them had a Lake Superior view and 2 of them across the street didn't, the Lake Superior view are going to sell at about 100,000 plus. And we've been finding more and more sales kind of over the years, and the pattern is pretty standard. It's, when you have that good view of Lake Superior, you're looking at that $100,000 price range and up. I know on Coyote Ridge, we had one that was about $117,000. Down in Lutzen last year, I think one was about $110,000. That one's right up by the ski hill. So that one's a really nice piece of land. And a lot of times with those views, you also are getting a little bit tougher to access property. So, I mean, that's not always the case, but a lot of times it can be the case. You're ending up having to drive up this driveway or this big steep hill to get up to one of those properties with a view like that. But we are able to make what they call a paired sales analysis and say, here's 2 or 3 lots that don't have a Lake Superior view, and here's 2 or 3 lots that do have a Lake Superior view. And the Lake Superior view, in my opinion, is really not even like a subjective factor. I think it's actually objective and measurable. But some people will debate you on that. And 4 years ago, when I first came up here, we didn't have as many sales as we have now for vacant land. And it was tougher to show that some of those view properties were selling like that. I do know of 2 particular one sale and one listing. There was a sale in Tofty. It's 15 acres, but really it's one build site. It has a lot of additional land that probably would never be divided or used for anything else. But in Tofty, and this one's on Birch Cliff, and it sold for $187,000. And that is, in my opinion, one build site with just a spectacular view. I think the listing said one of the best views, or it said the best view in Cook County. Now we had another one with a lot more land on Coyote Ridge. But if anybody's familiar with the actual Coyote Ridge, the mountain there was a 40-acre parcel, and it encapsulated that peak of the mountain. There's a driveway all the way up to the peak of that mountain. You can literally drive all the way up to the peak of that mountain. They were asking $400,000 for that piece of land. Wow. And a lot of that acreage was kind of inaccessible or not super desirable. It's on the backside of that hill, so you don't get a Lake Superior view. And really the majority or the bulk of that value was in that peak that I mean, one of the best build sites you could find in the county. Definitely would make it challenging for a septic system up there, but it's if you've ever had the chance to go up and look at that property, I mean, people hike all day long and don't get a view as good as that. And you can drive your pickup truck right up to the top of it. I don't think that one's listed anymore, but it was listed last fall for $400,000. I don't know if, I didn't see a CRV, so I don't think it's sold. I think that they maybe have pulled out of the market for one reason or another. So, but that one was on the market for some time. And, like I said, when you stand up there, so when you look down to the east, you look right down Wisconsin Street. And when you look down to the west, you can see Lutzen Mountains and you can see Silver Bay. And when you look back behind you to the north, you can see all into the valley. I mean, you're up above all of that. So you really have 360-degree views up there. It's kind of unlike anything you find, but that's a unique property. So we have enough to measure what the effect of those Lake Superior views are. When you get into the restricted views and the seasonal views, it's somewhat less measurable. Like with Miss Iverson's property, there are like, peekaboo views all year round. You get these little sections where you can see the lake here and there between the trees. That still does add value because, you still get that perspective when you're sitting there at the window that you see this flat land of water back there. Those typically sell a little higher, like from between that 60 to 80,000 range. So, and obviously, a sale 4 or 5 years ago that was $80,000. That might be $120,000 today. I know there was one up on Outlook Drive, and it's another one of those properties that when you get there, it's a 180-degree view, and you're probably 700 feet above Lake Superior, and it's just a spectacular view. So maybe it's not that much. I don't know my elevations.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yep.
Boy, that, my first year as commissioner and going through this boards of appeals and equalization, I didn't get the same sense as last year and this year. And when I look at the back of Northern Wilds, I'm feeling a little out of place, just with where values are and what's selling. Holy smokes, it's staggering. But that's the market for you.
Yeah, so I have a County Connections article that I'll be doing in July, and I've been kind of looking for what the topic should be. And everyone knows how this market is, and everyone knows how this market is acting right now. I may touch on a little bit of how what I'm seeing in the market, but I can think of multiple sales. I could probably list 10 sales right now that have sold in the last 2 or 3 years, had nothing, no improvements, no changes done, and now they're selling for $100,000 more. And this is anywhere from a $700,000 property to a $200,000 property. It's just like they have all added $100,000. So it's definitely tough for me. I guess when we're chasing the market up, that's probably part of the reason why this board meeting is so quiet. Because right now we have an extreme amount of high dollar sales, and people really probably don't think they have much of an argument. But a lot of people aren't realizing that their value for 2021, January 2nd, that's based off of sales going all the way back to October 2019. So from October 2019 through September 2020 is what we've studied to set that assessment. So the sales that are occurring now will be used to set the 2022 assessment. And, a lot of times I explained to another taxpayer about a week ago, when sometimes when people are paying their second half statement, so 4 months from now, people will be paying that October statement. I guess it's 4 months, but when they're paying that and they're looking at their value, a lot of them are probably going to say, well, I could get way more than that for my house today. But they don't understand that's going back to a sale almost 2 years ago. That's what we're comparing it to, is this sales study period from October to September, the year prior to the assessment. So it's definitely going to be an interesting end of the year for me, because I've been seeing so many of them where we're significantly low on our sales ratio. And I don't have any preliminary numbers yet because we don't have all of our sales entered into our system yet. We're kind of working through that. But once this meeting adjourns, we kind of shift gears from working through appeals, and we get to open up the 2022 assessment, and then we'll be focusing on quintile inspections for my appraisers, and me and Rachel and I will be in the office working on getting all of our sales and our sales studies prepared for the end of the year. So this after this meeting, we really do kind of turn the corner and shift gears and really change up what we're doing. But I think that next year's board meeting, it may be a little bit busier because there'll probably be some sales ratio adjustments. And the bottom line is that hopefully we can put together a sales grid and see where we're at in comparison to the market. I know a lot of times taxpayers, it's hard for them to understand that even if they're not planning on selling their property, or if it hasn't sold recently, it has to be brought to the market. It has to be compared or assessed and valued similar to what sales are selling for. So, people who may have bought their house or owned it for 40 years or more, they're thinking, well, we got this thing when it was $20,000 and now you've got it at $500,000. And, those are tough conversations, but the bottom line is what I tell them is I say, if you feel like you could sell it for the amount that it's assessed for, then you should, be more comfortable, or it should give you a little bit more peace of mind. And the same thing is true with all of your neighbors and all the other taxpayers in the county. As long as everyone's being valued at market, then you can assume that the system is working right and how it should.
Assessor Thompson, do you have much perspective on how other states do their processes? And I'm thinking particularly California. in that, property values went so crazy high so fast, that I had heard something about taxes not being collected until a sale, or something, or maybe it's, above a certain level or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, so it's proposition, I want to say it's proposition 8. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but California implemented a law that your assessed value would never change unless the property's sold. So people who have lived there, if let's say you live in San Francisco for 40, 50 years, your assessed value is probably like a tenth of what somebody who just bought their house next door is. That's the way I understand that it works, is that every time a house sells, it resets that value right to the sale price. So, there are some advantages for people who aren't selling or moving, and people who've been there long term. There's some advantages to that, but there's also disadvantages to, if you want to buy a home, if you're a first time buyer, you're going to be paying a lot more in taxes than some of these other people are. And, I actually, that came up as part of a conversation with one of the taxpayers who visited my office last week. And, part of that discussion was, one of the discussions that we had was the taxes increasing could push people out of the county. And as a result, they were saying that, something similar to California's program would be a benefit. But if you look at the values of property and real estate in San Francisco, it didn't have that effect. The real estate there is about as expensive as it can be in the whole country, and they're part of that program. So it didn't have that effect anyway. But certainly there are some benefits to that type of a system. But if you go into our association of assessors, they say absolutely not. There's no benefit to doing something like that.
Well, yeah, and I can see some disadvantages too, just as far as stability of local governments, and the taxes being brought in. But are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Otherwise, I got more questions too. I can just keep going. We do still have 6 minutes here before we can adjourn, so gotta fill the space. But another question I was going to ask is just about, with that idea that people getting taxed out. I know that you're looking at smaller areas, and kind of making those zones or whatever, so that a sale and down in Lutsen doesn't necessarily affect something up in Hoveland, and vice versa, that sort of thing. And I think that's going to do wonders for helping keep some people in our community and not getting taxed out. Can you think of or brainstorm, and I won't hold you to these, any other strategies we might have, any options we might have to try to help people from not getting taxed out of their homes?
Well, I do always inform the taxpayers, especially if they're residents and they're homesteading, that they should be applying for the property tax refunds. There's millions and millions of dollars that go unclaimed every year. There's 2 different types of property tax refunds. One is based off of income. If you have a restricted or limited income, you may qualify for that tax refund. And then also there's another one that's called the special property tax refund. And that would be for if your taxes increased more than, I think it's 12% in 1 year, then they refund a portion of that percentage of increase. So those are 2 programs that for any resident, if we're talking, residents being taxed out, that is always an option for a homesteaded property. Outside of that, it's really tough because the assessments really don't have a whole lot to do in the big picture of the effective tax rate. If all of our assessments were 100% accurate, then it's all on the levy, and that's. But another thing I would say is that anybody who feels like their property may be overvalued should certainly contact my office, because it's not just, it is what it is. You can call me and say, hey, there's a couple sales here that would suggest my value is too high. And I certainly will take any information and look at it. The one thing that doesn't really help is when somebody, calls and says, my value went up or my taxes went up. And if they don't really have any reason for the call other than that, if somebody calls me and says, I know of other sales, this is too high, that I take and I do something with it. But, if somebody calls and says my taxes are too high, I'll do a little bit of digging. And if the value is accurate, then, there's just not much of a discussion to have.
Well, and so those are state programs, correct?
Yep, those are administered by the state. Yep.
Are you familiar with any county administered programs?
I am not, as far as property taxes go, like there's the economic development and those types of things. One thing I'm not sure, and it just kind of came to me the other day because I saw the lodging tax was needing to be renewed for Cook County. Those are set up through the legislature. I'm not sure if somehow that can be allocated for affordable housing or not. I mean, that's so far beyond what an assessor really looks into and stuff, but maybe that lodging tax could be kind of redistributed. I know we're seeing a pretty good numbers year wise. This year we're seeing pretty good numbers in the lodging tax, and I know a lot of that is having to do with the pandemic and the way travel has kind of changed. But I think that may be contributable to our licensing ordinance with the vacation rentals. I feel like that certainly couldn't have hurt the lodging tax numbers.
Right. No, yeah. And we discussed that at our committee of the whole a little bit, and it I think it get quite messy quickly, and especially just from what we experienced going through the short-term rental. We did our thing and we took it to the state, and then of course they did their thing. So that's where it gets messy. So, but I think we would all love that if we could do that. And lodging taxes that we're bringing in are going up year after year after year. So that'd be a really good way. Commissioner Smolson.
Well, I was just going to mention that, I think it was Commissioner Hawkins that brought that up. And since she's in the room with him, there's some sort of little mind control going on there. The other thing I would the other thing I would mention or just recommend the two programs that you brought up. I would really recommend. I know you've been telling people this, but when you write your article, please include those. I think that'd be very important for folks to recognize that there are ways to deal with those, and help folks. And we really do look for those opportunities. We just need them to take advantage.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalston. I appreciate that. I think I am going to kind of just touch on all things assessment in that article. I'll touch a little on how the market is, and I'll touch a little bit on, we welcome appeals. If you have good reason to believe that your value is incorrect, call me by all means. When somebody calls me and, they could have called me 3 years earlier, I tell them on the phone, I say, it's too bad, it's unfortunate you didn't catch this earlier or call earlier on it. And a lot of times they just say, oh, we didn't really think it was a big deal until the tax bill kept going up. So.
Well, and on the note about the lodging tax and tying it to some kind of workforce housing or affordable housing or just housing in general, I think it's an awesome idea. I just think it's dangerous to start messing with what's already set up. Not that it can't happen, but what I was going to suggest is when we have an opportunity to talk with our legislators, to just make a little plug. Hey, have you thought about this? And maybe in addition to, rather than instead of messing with that, and seeing, just making a little plug here and there, and get a little bug in their ear and kind of get that conversation going, because I think it's excellent. And my perspective is limited, but I can't see how it'd be any sweat off their back for us to do that. I think it would only, we could even tout it as a pilot to see how that works, because certainly there would be unforeseen consequences and ramifications of doing that sort of thing, but it could also be extremely helpful for us. So that's my 2 cents. Hey, guess what? We're 2 minutes over 7 o'clock, so we can keep the conversation going if other people have questions or ideas, but otherwise we can also look for a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Mills, I would like to just throw out there, and I've mentioned it to James, our Administrator Yorkie once, about the tax forfeit lands we have and potentially looking at some programs for affordable housing with that. I know there are options to convert tax forfeit tax forfeit lands into affordable housing projects, but it takes like a plan, a project, and it's going to require some time and some effort put into it. So.
Administrator Yorkie.
Yeah, before we adjourn, I just wanted to add my thanks to the commissioners for Bob's work. He brings a level of rigor and discipline to the analysis that he does that really benefits all of us, all the taxpayers of Cook County. And he lives and breathes the stuff, and he knows what he's doing, and I really appreciate that. So thanks, Bob.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
We're lucky to have you.
I will agree with that.
Well, Brady, I don't know if have you made a motion, or was that just you tried to make a motion, but I think you had to support. Do you want to do the honors here?
I'd be happy to make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Assuming none, I'll do a roll call vote. Auditor Powers.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commissioner Storley.
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan. I could not record your vote, I'm afraid. You're on mute. Commissioner Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank
Crying,
you.
I don't know what happened.
No, I was worried for a minute, but
I was
thank you.
too.
Yeah.
I thought we'd be here all night.
Commissioner Swanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills is aye as well. We are unanimous approval to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.